Hello, I'm Janet Benton, Senior Vice President and Northern Nevada Small Business Manager for Nevada State Bank. This is the second of 4 videos about the Nevada State Bank 2016 Small Business Survey. We'll talk about how business people viewed the state and national economy, what they predicted, and whether the country and the economy have finally turned around. We are excited to have one of Nevada's leading experts on economic data with us today to discuss the survey results. Jeremy Aguero is a principal analyst with Applied Analysis, which conducted the small business survey. Jeremy also serves on the advisory board for Nevada State Bank. So Jeremy, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What do Nevada business owners think about the economy?
Well, look, I think they think about the economy not unlike the way you and I do just when we're sitting around talking. I mean, look, how can you not be impressed when you think about where we were just a couple of years ago and where we are today? I mean, the state of Nevada is now at or near the nation's highest in terms of population growth, employment growth. We've had some of the most incredible economic development stories anywhere in the United States. Companies like Tesla, Faraday Futures, things like the Hyperloop have come to town. We are now, a nation leader in things like autonomous vehicles and I guess advanced mobility. We're talking about that on all levels. We've seen record levels in terms of visitor volume coming through and new investments. As a matter of fact, there's in excess of about $15 billion worth of projects planned, proposed, or under construction. So when we think about, what business owners what they are reporting to us. Look, we go back and we look at the survey results and we see that they understand that those things are happening, that 2015 was a good year. I think there is some continued concern about whether they could carry that into 2016 as they start to look on the horizon. But overall, compared to where we were before, I need to tell you, I think that business owners and just frankly residents of of Nevada as a whole, north, south, and rural, are just really impressed with how far we've come.
A lot of small business owners in the survey actually said that they increased their revenue and their profitability last year. However, that really isn't tied at this point to some of the big announcements like Tesla and Switch. So could you kind of go into why you think that the profitability went up for most small business owners? Sure.
I mean, let's take a look at what business does when the economy turns down, right? When the economy turns down, we're looking at every way we can. Businesses look at every way they can in order to shore up that income statement, right? They're looking at cutting expenses. They ask one person to do 2 people's jobs. They think creatively about going into other markets or diversifying their revenue base. All that's great. But then when revenue starts to grow again, what we see is that more of that falls to the bottom line. And you've seen a number of businesses that have had the ability to do that. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. You combine that with the fact that now we're seeing some increased investment and frankly optimism. That means that when someone had a reserve, maybe they're coming in off the sideline and saying, you know what, now is the time for me to hire that additional employee. Now is the time for me to expand a little bit more of that office space. Now is the time for me to get that second warehouse or to move into that other market that they weren't before. And we're seeing it again in almost every sector of our economy. Other than just a couple, every sector of the state of Nevada's economy added jobs over the past 12 months at the same time that we saw the unemployment rate continue to fall dramatically. Those are very good economic indicators for the state of Nevada.
Why do you think that most small business owners in Nevada were much more optimistic about Nevada versus the actual economy of the United States?
Well, that's always a tough one to answer. I mean, when we think about the economy of the United States as a whole, it's this nebulous thing. And let's not forget that we have this thing, a presidential election out there. And so everybody's got this heightened scrutiny on everything that's going on at the federal level and particularly in Washington, D.C. And if you want to talk about something that people are uniformly concerned about, it's about our federal government. But what they don't do is translate that to the state of Nevada. When they look at what's happening in their own communities, with their own markets, the ability to sell, expansion, people having jobs, housing prices going up, their ability to move product or to make investments or to get a loan, those type of things. When they think about that in the state of Nevada, it feels better, and frankly, for many reasons, it is better here. Some of the softness that we saw across the United States over the better part of the past year just hasn't been recognized recognized here in the state of Nevada. We've actually done better than the United States as a whole. Our unemployment rate has dropped faster. We're adding jobs at about 3% per year, which is better than the national average. Our population is growing at 2 to 3 times the national average, which means that not only are, it's not like we're having a bunch more kids as regard. That's a lot of folks moving in and choosing our state as a place to live. Those are good things. As a matter of fact, even when we look at things like retirees moving into our state, we've seen the number of retirees even escalate, which is just good for us. And I think that when business owners look at what's happening in their own backyard, when they're looking at their own balance sheets and those feel a little bit more shored up than they did before, and they look at their own income statements and they see top line revenues going up and they see increased profitability at the end of the day, what they're ultimately able to take home, that is a reason to feel good about the state of Nevada, and frankly, better than they do about the United States as a whole.
One of the things that we alluded to in one of the prior segments was about small business owners' concerns recently about the stock market and the instability there, as well as in some of the big world markets. Could you elaborate a little bit more?
Sure. Look, and it is a long answer, so forgive me if I go a little bit long on this one, but there's all of this discussion going on right now relative to the instability in the stock market, and so much of that is tied to the fact that major corporations just aren't producing the same level of results that they did before, and that's an indication of some softening in the national economy. Again, we haven't seen a whole lot of that here at home in the state of Nevada, but it's happening. And then there's 2 other things that have absolutely entered the business psyche, if we can think about it that way. Number one is China, right? China is this massive country with all of these consumers, and frankly, if it shows some degree of instability, everyone around the planet starts to get pretty concerned about what that means for everybody. Now, one of the things to remember is that, while China is a huge, huge market and globally incredibly important, it's not like the United States is exporting a whole lot to China. As a matter of fact, it's a relatively small share of our GDP, or the total amount of our economy. China has seen a slowdown. There's no doubt about it. But for a lot of reasons, that slowdown was not unexpected. China has some degree of instability in its economy, and that's going to be reflected in global markets. Now, on the outside of that, you also have places everywhere from South America to Australia that sell things to China, particularly minerals that are being mined from everywhere around the world. And China is the #1 consumer of many of those materials and minerals that are out there. That slowdown means that what happens in China doesn't stay in China, then maybe it ripples through places like Australia or South America, or even throughout Europe, which continues to deal with some degree of instability. I mean, the bright side of this whole message is that the United States has actually outperformed the global economy by a fairly healthy margin. It's not as though the Chinese instability has rippled through our economy and had those similar effects, because frankly, we don't sell that much to China. Now, on the other side of that equation, what about what we buy from China? We buy more from China than anywhere else in the entire world. And as China actually, if you want to think about it, adjusts the value of its currency, that is actually likely to make Chinese goods that we buy here in the United States less expensive, not more expensive. And that can be a pretty good thing for us over the long term. Now, I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that instability in China is anyway a good thing. It is not. But the idea that that's going to immediately affect someone, a small business owner in Reno or one in Henderson or North Las Vegas, probably pretty unlikely overall. Now, the other side, of course, is what we've seen with oil, right? And that's the other reason that the stock market has seen some instability. That's a problem for us, and there's no doubt about it. Oil has been linked to probably about 4 of the past 5 recessions we've had in the United States. So that oil market instability is something that any analyst would be foolish not to take a look at. But it is also a bit of a double-edged sword. To places like North Dakota or Nebraska or Oklahoma, where some of that oil economy has grown to become increasingly large, yeah, they've got a lot to worry about, and there's a huge amount of instability in those areas that, frankly, we're concerned about on a national level, because that's grown to be a bigger part of our economy than it was 5 or 6 years ago due to things like fracking that many people have heard about. But I think sometimes we forget the other side of the coin, and that is, as that price of oil drops, so does the price of gasoline, right? We in the state of Nevada consume almost 1 billion gallons of gasoline. As a matter of fact, we consume more this year. We will consume more this year than 1 billion gallons of gasoline every year. And if the price of gasoline drops by $1, that means we save about $1 billion in consuming gasoline. Those are dollars that can be spent at those local businesses as well. And so my guess is you're going to see a little bit more of that in 2016 than you saw in 2015.
We were talking earlier that you are one of the rare creatures. You're a native of Las Vegas, which is very rare in our very diverse communities. And one of the things we talked about is how Vegas was, and frankly, all of Nevada was once looked at strictly as gaming, more around entertainment. Can you talk a little bit about why and how did that change happen so that it made a more robust economy by not being so self-reliant on casinos and gambling?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a tough one, but I'll try and handle it the best I can. You know, Nevada is unique for kind of a special purpose, and that is that we have fewer people in the state of Nevada that were actually born in the state of Nevada than any other state in the entire United States. That is something that affects almost everything that we do, from our politics to our business dynamics, is affected by so many people in the state of Nevada came from somewhere else. And I think that our diversity as an economy is a absolutely wonderful thing, that it is part of the fabric of everything that we are, and is one of our greatest strengths. So it's something that I really kind of do cherish as a third generation. I guess I'm fourth generation. My kids are fifth generation from Nevada. When you ask that sort of second question relative to the diversity of our economy, you know, if we look back to when gaming was legalized in 1931 in the state of Nevada and think about how our economy has changed. You know, my grandmother was my best friend growing up. I had a paper route, and I used to have to go to her house every day and kind of wrap the papers. And she graduated high school here in, I think, 1939. And when she talks about how Las Vegas evolved and how it sort of came to be, this is where she grew up in southern Nevada here. And when she talked about how it used to be, she was absolutely convinced the single most important thing that ever happened to the Nevada economy, and the southern Nevada in particular, was the advent of air conditioning, right? That when she grew up as a kid, she used to have to sleep under a wet blanket. They would take a blanket and dip it underneath, and sort of that's how they would sleep in order to remain cool. I can't even imagine what it'd be like to be here without air conditioning in August. I think my kids would freak out, right? They would completely lose it. But, you know, it's the advent of technology from 1931, thinking about, okay, we're going to legalize gambling. We just started the construction of the Hoover Dam, Boulder Dam. When people talk about it in two different ways, it's considered the 8th wonder of the world. And so we have a railroad here that we can bring people in, and that evolution starts incredibly quickly, right? There's influences here from both positive and negative influences. You have folks like Howard Hughes that come in, and ultimately corporate folks that come in, and you fast forward to people like Steve Wynn completely transforming this tourism-based economy. It becomes absolutely synonymous with the state of Nevada, right? And then we start building bigger and better hotels and casinos. We expand into places like Lake Tahoe, which becomes remarkably successful, and those things kind of change over time. But to your point, that was who we were a lot in the 1990s and 2000s. We've made great strides to start to diversify our economy today. Our economy is not just one thing today. We've made strides in healthcare. We've made strides in technology. Companies like Switch, I think, are a great example of us completely diversifying who we are as an economy with a homegrown startup that has become one of the most successful data centers in the entire United States, that was born here out of environmental issues and the fact that they didn't deal with as many natural disasters here as they might otherwise, and frankly that we got lucky that a genius by the name of Rob Roy was willing to make an investment and say, I've got an idea, I'm going to try and make it work, and the community got behind him in doing that. That isn't to say that tourism isn't remarkably important to us as an economy today. As a matter of fact, the state of Nevada still today is the least diversified economy in the United States of its size. And that is something that we are going to continue to struggle with. I think you have to give Governor Sandoval and his Governor's Office of Economic Development, that's led by a gentleman by the name of Steve Hill, I think you have to give them remarkable credit for changing the entire landscape as it relates to economic development. We are different today. The Tesla deal, the Faraday deal, the Hyperloop deal, the ones that are making national, if not international news relative to that are ones that are 100% credit to the fact that they changed who we are viewed as from an economy. I think you also have to look at our tourism economy itself. It's not as though that economy has stood still. That didn't sound right, that it has stood still, excuse me, right? That economy has not. As a matter of fact, even our tourism economy has diversified. As a matter of fact, here in Southern Nevada, we have something like 7 of the top 10 producing nightclubs in the entire United States. Some of that is also happening in Northern Nevada. We've integrated with the resorts in the north relative to skiing and things like that up at Lake Tahoe. That try of transformation within the industry has also continued to make us stronger. We're going to have to do a whole heck of a lot more than that because we need to continue to diversify this economy, not just for the tourism industry, but for the economy as a whole.
What do you think about some of the changes that are happening across the nation in regards to restrictive laws around energy? Because we have focused a lot on natural energy in the state of Nevada. So how do you think that's going to impact some of the rulings that have been happening around the nation?
Oh boy, again, another tough one. With regard to energy overall, the reality is that fossil fuels are not where it's at, right? I think there's an increasing concern about not only about the economy, but also about the economy's impact on the environment. And I don't think that's going away anytime soon. As a matter of fact, I don't think a lot of people know that Nevada is absolutely a nation leader in terms of renewable energy, in terms of geothermal, in terms of wind, and in terms of solar. We've done some pretty remarkable things. The other side of that coin, however, is that renewable energy is still today more expensive. It is a more expensive alternative than traditional fossil fuels, particularly when the price of gasoline, as we talked about, has dropped so dramatically. So when we think about energy in the context of Nevada's economy, look, there's no doubt that renewables, we have to continue to be a leader when it comes to renewable energy, absolutely. But we also have to respect the fact that those costs matter, and if the price of gasoline is going to drop to below $2 a gallon, and if rooftop solar is going to be difficult for us to be able to be sustainable relative to our power grid, that those are things that we're going to have to deal with.
On behalf of Nevada State Bank, I'd like to thank Jeremy for presenting this valuable information. To download a free copy of our 2016 Small Business Survey, go to nevadasmallbusiness.com/survey. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.